Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to the latest episode of the Hard Compound Live. For those of you who don't know, my name's Rich, and I run and operate the Hard Compound. We're a one-stop shop for all things motorsport, four wheels, two wheels, on-road, off-road, and everything in between, if there is such a thing. We do this on our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Generally 3 posts a day with some race reviews, race previews, any breaking news that is happening around the world, some of our favorite cars and bikes, and all that kind of good stuff. So do give us a follow: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also on YouTube. Search for the Hard Compound. Give us a follow, subscribe, and all that social media jargon, so you don't miss out on any of the posts that we put out on a daily basis. As I said, we generally put one out in the morning, one at lunchtime, one in the evening here in the UK. In case you hadn't noticed, we also do live video interviews, just like this one. These are streamed on our Facebook, our Twitter, and our YouTube channel. We've had some fantastic guests over the last 3 years. We've been doing these. This is chat number 102. Unbelievably, we've had drivers past and present from the worlds of F1 and IndyCar, sports cars, the British touring cars, world touring cars, the world of bikes. Just a few names. I'm not going to name them all, obviously. We've had the honour and the privilege of speaking with Mr. Mario Andretti, with Mr. Jackie Ix, with John Watson, also the likes of Martin Donnelly, Carl Wendlinger, Karin Chandhok, Mika Salo, Mark Sura, Emanuele Pirro, Ari Leindyke, Danny Sullivan, Willie T. Ribb, Scott Pruitt, Alex Palou, Will Power, Alanza Jr., Catherine Legg, Mark Blundell, Eddie Cheever, Stefan Johansson, Derek Warwick, etc., etc. Also, Petter Solberg from the world of rallying and from the world of touring cars, the likes of Andy Prio, Fabrizio Giovanardi, Jerry Marni, Gabriele Tarquini, Anthony Reid, Ivan Muller, Steve Soper, John Cleland, many others as well. So do go and check those out. They are on our Facebook, saved in the video section, and on YouTube in the live section. But don't go and do it just yet, because we have a fantastic guest coming to join us in the next few seconds. She's gone from working on cars, being an engineer for a manufacturer, to the hot seat in the GT Challenge here in the UK, and in the McLaren, the pure McLaren series, and much more besides. So we're going to bring in right now. Please join me in extending a very warm welcome to Mia Flewitt. And there we are. We are connected. Pardon the long rambling intro. It gets longer every time.
That's okay.
How's things? Everything all good with you there in Sweden?
Yes, everything's good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, well, thank you very much for coming on. I probably should have started with that. Obviously, it's great to speak with you. We like to speak with people who have got different stories from across the motorsport world, and your story's quite a unique one. So I thought I'd certainly wanted to come and speak with you. And I've watched you in the British GT Championship a couple of times, so
thank you.
I thought it'd be good to get you on. So yeah, so obviously it's great to have you on. Thank you very much for coming on. Just want to turn my attention to the comment section. We've got a few comments coming in already. Good evening, folks. If you have any questions or comments, or if you just want to chat amongst yourselves while we're talking here, then please do. We'll see them in real time, and we'll try and work them all in to our chat as we go. Right, I think that's the intro's done. Firstly, how's everything on the racing side with you this year? Are you is there any sort of plans, or are you just seeing how it's all going?
Well, this year I'm taking a bit of a year out from GT racing to focus on my new business, One Viva, and also, you know, I'm gonna do a little bit of racing later on this year, but in my historic cars.
Right.
But I think not in GT racing this year, for a few reasons, really. The main one being I started a business late last year. We do all things motoring as well, clearly, it's what we do is cars. But just wanted to give that everything this year to get it off to a good start. And as you probably know already, the motor racing is does take over your life. So
Yes.
and it's still very much part of my life and everything. But yeah, there was a lot of different reasons as well. Some of my biggest sponsors as well were all suffering a little bit from the crisis in the Ukraine, and energy prices going through the roof. And
Sure.
I just felt like there was a little bit of a struggle this year, and as you know as well, motorsport is quite expensive. So, and to be able to give it everything, I just needed. I felt like I couldn't do that this year, and that was so the right decision was not to make it like half-hearted, which I didn't want to do. So, yeah, hopefully, who knows what the future brings, but I'd love to get back. And I spend my life watching and I had like literally here at my house in Sweden, I had Kenny Brack here last weekend. My life is motorsport, and that's where most of my friends are in motorsport. And so I'm very lucky to be still involved. And I'll be watching them out in British ET this weekend, wishing I was there at Portimao this weekend.
To get involved.
I think it's going to be quite warm out there, but I it's what we do and everything. But this year I'm just going to have to sit it out, for a few different reasons.
Yeah, sure. And I guess with when you're starting a business, you need to give it your all just to get it off the ground and get things.
Yes,
just to get it up and running.
Yeah.
You mentioned Kenny Brack there. Next time you see him, tell him to email me, because he said he was going to, and he's not.
He doesn't. No, he's a
man of few words, isn't he, Kenny? He's
a fellow Swede, and it's he's such a nice guy, and he's always been very supportive of me and my racing. But he's first and foremost a friend. We don't spend all the time together talking about motor racing, although that's we do laugh and talk about things that we've done and remember and things like that. And he's but he's just a genuinely nice guy. He's a nice guy to be around. And so yeah, he is. He's super, but he's very typically Swedish. Right. Yeah.
I didn't want to say it, but
hey, I'm Swedish, so that's all right.
I remember him I'm sure it was British F3. I'm sure I remember him seeing at Brands Hatch, and then obviously went to IndyCar, and we all know what he's well known for, both of the Indy 500 and the accident. And it's just great that he's still in one piece, which is wonderful.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's and he actually looks surprisingly young for his years, and I think it is one of those. He can't run, but he's surprisingly well. So he's great guy.
Yeah. And he's obviously involved with McLaren, as you have been as well, and we'll come to.
Well, so he has actually just left McLaren as a.
Oh, has he? Okay.
Yeah, so he's a free spirit again now, and he. But who knows? Again, he wants to be involved in car. We're all the same. We work with cars all our lives. I worked with cars since I was 19 years old, and I think it is just it's a passion, and you work with it in one way or another all the time, and Kenny's the same.
Yeah, once it gets into your blood, it kind of stays there, and
it does. Yeah,
and we wouldn't want it to leave anyway. We wouldn't want it to. It's
no,
we love it. I mean, you mentioned that obviously you've been around cars from like quite a young age. It sort of leads into the first sort of question that we always ask: is how did you get involved with the world of motorsport in the first place?
Well, I never really sort of. I guess I didn't dream of motorsport. I just didn't know that's what I wanted to do. But I've always loved cars, and so I started working for Volvo when I was like 19 years old. It opened Volvo opened a factory here in my town where I am right at the moment in the south of Sweden, and I worked my way through. I did all sorts of things. I built cars. I drove forklifts. I did all sorts of things. And eventually, it took me to a point where I sort of, I was one of very few people, 6 of us basically built all the show cars for Volvo. And we, when there was this time when there was a joint venture between Tom Walkinshaw Racing, TWR and Volvo to build a new Volvo C70 in the sort of mid 90s.
That was like the first coupe, wasn't it? They'd done. It was the first real coupe Volvo had done.
Yeah, exactly. First sort of frameless doors, and it was all your first convertible. So I worked on that, and it was just one of those things where I sort of ended up spending my days with the engineers from TWR, who were all product engineers, designed the car, it all worked, it all packaged in CATIA, and it all looked, but you couldn't actually build the thing. So my job was to tell them, it's great, but it fits, but you can't actually get your hands in, or you can't build it, or you have to change your tool every 3 seconds, or whatever.
Right.
Which actually led me to this point where they did offer to train me, and I became a manufacturing engineer.
Wow.
But kind of almost organically. That wasn't the plan in a way when I first started, but I ended up
working for that role almost.
Yeah. I knew how to build a whole car myself. I did, spent my life, as I said, trying to find new ways of building cars. So I became a manufacturing engineer because my passion was basically finding the best way of building a car, and our technicians built like an eighth of the car. So, and to build, it's not just like fitting, I don't know, a partial shelf or whatever it is, in a car. It's actually quite a lot of operations that you have to do as one operator. So so that was really challenging and exciting, and I loved it. So
because you designed the actual process, didn't you? Was it the actual process of doing it? You said this is how it all has to go together.
The actual process of building the car rather than actually designing the car. The TWR engineers designed the cars, but thankfully I was part of the process of process, I guess, of how to finally build this thing. So and that led one thing led to another. I now worked for TWR, and the engineering side of this joint venture all belonged to TWR basically. So I left Volvo and joined TWR, which subsequently led me to the UK. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, did you work with Tom himself, like directly? Because
I met Tom quite a few times.
I mean, we spoke with Rickard Rydell, and who obviously drove the Volvo in the touring cars. It's like the golden era of Volvo in the UK for motorsport fans.
Yeah,
and he just said Tom was great. Usually,
he
said it was a bit.
Tom was, I mean, obviously he was a very successful driver himself, and and his heart was probably in motor racing rather than the engineering side of it. But like we have other businesses today, and we can sort of name a few, I guess, in the sense that TWR had like an engineering side, obviously, and then they ran some race. They obviously worked a lot with Holden in Australia, who made race or rally cars. But the main thing was, at the time when I was at TWR, we ran Arrow's Formula One team, and but Tom's passion was definitely, I think, in the sort of racing side of it. Excuse me. And I did meet him quite a few times, and he was always very super loyal to people that he worked with. So
Lovely.
He but he had a lot of presence. He sadly he's passed away now, but he's when he came into a room, when he came into a factory where we worked, and it was sort of like everybody stood up. It was just he did have real presence, and we all wanted to do the best for him, and so I only really have good memories of Tom.
Yeah, I think that's what, like Rickard said, he said as well, it was just so much respect for him because of what he was doing and the team that he'd put together and everything like that, which is lovely. You don't get anywhere without respect these days. So.
No.
So that was good to hear.
Yeah, so I guess that was my first sort of time where although I didn't actually work, I carried on working as an engineer for Tom, but not on the racing side, but on the sort of engineering side, and worked a lot on other projects that McLaren that TWR did, and I think my final sort of project was that we engineered and built the Renault Clio V6 in this factory here in this town where I'm from, in Sweden, and I designed the factory, and I had a team of engineers who worked for me, who designed the process to build that car here, and then I actually had to put the second series went back into Dieppe, back to Renault, and was built in their main factory. And I helped sort of put that process together to put that back into Dieppe, and then I retired. So at a golden age of 34.
Yeah, you've got to a point where you've got a team of people, and you obviously know what you're doing, and you're setting wheels rolling, in the main Renault factories and things like that. And all of a sudden, it was no more. I mean, was that a tough decision?
Yeah.
We'll come on to the reason why in a minute, but it must have been a big change because you were
it was very hard. It was a very it was very strange to start with. I'd worked for literally worked since I was 16 years old, and I found that really hard to start with, not having like the routine of going, working, but also I took great pride, and I loved what I did, and I loved being a car builder. I loved, everything I did, it was I always strive to learn more. So, which was probably why I got all these opportunities as I went through, because I always wanted to learn more. When I first started being a car builder as well, I built an 1/8 of a car, and then they said, well, if you learn to build 2/8 of the car, then you can always stand in for other people, and if you build 3/8 and 4/8, 5, whatever, until you can build a whole car. And I got to do this test, so I had to build the whole car, and I was like, because you got the highest pay, because we were paid for how flexible we were, and so I was always competitive, I was very competitive with myself. I have to do this, and I have to, but I loved it. It was like, and it wasn't the most exciting cars in the world, but proudly
it doesn't have to be, does it?
I've got an XC90 sitting on the driveway, and I'm just like, the Volvo is still it's not like driving a supercar or a race car, it doesn't give you, but it's like still really fabulously high quality cars, you know what I mean? It's like so I'm proud of my Volvo heritage.
Yeah, and rightly so. I mean, I mentioned off camera that I'd been to Sweden, was it 6-7 years ago now, and the hire car we had was a Volvo V40, I think it was. The 40 V4, I can't remember. But a little hatchback thing, and it was fantastic. I mean, when you put your foot down, it went, but it was really comfortable, really nice, really love. And it's the only Volvo that I've driven, and I very nearly bought one. But then another manufacturer came in with a better deal for a car. I'm not going to mention it, but it was a slightly bigger car. But it was a really, really, really fantastic car to drive. Very underrated, I think, especially over here. But so from going, from that environment of wanting to better yourself and learn new things and push yourself, all of a sudden you're not, and you kind of made the jump to follow your husband's career and his role. Was it at McLaren at the time? Was it?
No,
Or was it?
no.
Was
So
it
we actually met in the UK, but we both lived in Sweden at the time. He also worked for Tom, which is how we met long time ago now, 25 years ago. But we, he got an opportunity to go back. He started his career with Ford,
right?
And he went to Rolls-Royce and Bentley, and then he to Autonova, which is this joint venture here in Sweden. And he got an offer to go back to Ford for quite a big role, which was based in Germany, which is where Ford's European headquarters were in Cologne. So so that was a decision we made, was that, that was the right thing to do, to move to Cologne, which obviously made that quite hard for me. But it was a turbulent time anyway for TWR, and they were in the process of being bought out by Menard at the time, and it was it went into receivership, and it was all sorts of chaotic stuff. So it's the right decision, but it was a
probably
difficult
the best time
one
to get out, maybe.
Yeah, and I mean, I kept my job, and that was all fine. I could have stayed, but it was it was the right thing to do. So we moved to Germany. We kept our base in the Cotswolds because TWR was based in Leafield in the Cotswolds, like a lot of Formula One teams are around that area around Enstone and etc. And we moved there, and so that's where we still are. We're based in the UK around where TWR was, and we moved to Germany. We eventually moved to Istanbul. We lived in Istanbul for 5 years, and sort of spent part-time UK, part-time in Istanbul. Back to Germany, and then obviously Mike got offered the job at McLaren, and we moved back to the UK full time. And it wasn't until then, really, maybe just before, so we were still in Istanbul when my husband and I decided we needed like a hobby we could do together.
Sure.
And since our only hobby was cars, we decided we were going to go motor racing, and as you do. But anyway, we went to go
as everyone does.
But we went to go our race licenses, and I can remember it so well because I remember the guy who I did my race license with, and he basically said, "Okay," he said, "I don't think you'll kill anyone or yourself, so it'll be fine."
That's a good
but that's what it was. It was that kind of level, and we bought a 1963 Lotus Elan, which we did up with a friend of ours. A friend of ours who used to be a phenomenal racing driver, and he used to race like single seaters. He used to race with Ayrton Senna. Famously took joint pole with Senna at Brands Hatch, and so but he's spent all his life renovating Lotuses, and so anyway, so he helped us renovate this car and or restore, I guess, and then we went racing, and we had such a blast. Honestly, it was so much fun.
I'm sure.
And we weren't, we didn't really know what we were doing, but we were so excited, and we did our first ever race, I think 2015 at Silverstone, and we loved everything about it. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to, our hobby now is going to be, racing this Elan. And about the same sort of time, I did my first ever track day in a McLaren, which was at Donington Park. This is really how I got into motor racing, because this
start point
sparked the passion, I guess. And I can remember it so well. It was in the 650S, and and the driver coach in the car with me, a guy called Rob Garofal, he said to me, he's like, wow, he said, you should race. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm already racing, I'm doing. I know. He said, well, I mean, you should really race. And and I'm like, well, how? And he said, like, well, why don't you do like a performance academy thing with McLaren, and I'll help you. And he said, I can feel that you can feel. He said, I can feel through my bum that you can feel it through yours. But basically that's what he said. He said, like, I know I don't have to teach you certain things. He said, because the things I can teach you, but you can't teach that. So he said,
you kind of almost knew that you had
the feel like and
yeah.
So anyway, so that's how I started basically. And I did a performance academy course with McLaren in road cars and then in track cars, and became totally obsessed by tracks and cars and slicks and anyway. But it was like everything was like, oh my god, I have to be at the race circuit every day, and I still wake up every morning wanting to go racing.
Wanting to do it, which must be a great feeling, knowing that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah,
it's what you want.
It's like living my dream. Yeah,
which is fantastic. I mean, before you had that track day in the performance academy, did you just think this is just going to be something that we can do for fun? Did you ever think, oh, this could lead somewhere, or was it just purely for fun to begin with?
Yeah, it was just for fun. I sort of never did it for any other reason than it was fun and it was exciting, and gave me that kind of sense of achievement, I guess, in a way that where you sort of, I don't know, you're mastering this machine. I mean, it sounds a bit corny, but it's like I have this, like, I'm so competitive, and I'm very competitive with myself. It doesn't matter what it is I do. It doesn't have to be anything to do with cars or racing. And in all my things that I do in life, I'm always striving to be better and learn and competing with myself. And this kind of fed the I don't know, my passion for competing with myself. That it was sort of like this. Well, every time I went out on track, every lap, every corner, I kept thinking, okay, you've done this corner, and I couldn't figure out certain things, and I made it like a mission almost, like, okay, I'm going to nail that corner. I'm going to really nail it. And like, I'm to the point where I was like shutting my eyes. I'm like, I am not going to break, because my brain is saying break. And I'm like, I know I can go further. So I'm just going to shut my eyes and hope for the best. And then I'm going to break. And it's just like, and that is who I am. That is me. So that's like, it was me living out my own, I don't know, because it's like racing to me, or even being on a track, but more motor racing than just track days and stuff. But like, it's about being quite selfish. And in life, you're not allowed to be selfish, because this is not how it works. We're always looking after other people, and you're doing things the way they should be done. Whilst when you're in a race car, or you put your helmet on, you get on track, there is nothing between. It's you and the car, and your performance is, but there's nobody else can influence what that is. That's like
just you.
That is you, and you can be selfish, which is quite a rare thing. So I quite enjoyed that time. I was no longer a wife, a mother, or I'm a grandma even, and I'm like, I'm none of those things. I'm just a driver.
It's just you,
like,
and
no better, no worse, no different to anyone else. I'm just a driver, and it's all about nailing that next corner and nailing that lap, and then it's like, It's
That's
a
like the main focus is just
phenomenal
what
thing.
you're doing, and it's a
Yeah,
result, and it's a result for you
yeah,
as well, which is
exactly.
I just love the way you put that. It's a chance to be selfish because, as you say, we don't get the chance to do that. We'd all love to be, but
Yeah, no, I know. It is,
that's
but this is very much, it allows you to be selfish without having to explain why, because that's the only way you can be in a race car, really.
yeah, absolutely. And that's good. I mean, so obviously, by this point, by the time you've done these track days in the academy, and you're thinking, "Oh, I want to do this." What was the next? I mean, I read somewhere that you were you were threatening to buy a Can-Am car, which
Yeah,
they are bonkers. They're absolutely mad. Those machines. I mean, they are so
yeah.
powerful. They're so, and they're incredible things. But did you kind of got talked out of it? Was it, or was it,
Well, it was sort of.
or were you told?
It's actually. Yeah, I was more told. It was more. It's what I because obviously I started with historic cars, and even though I drove McLarens on track days and things like that, I raced the Elan, and I was just like, and the Elan, I mean, it is a brilliant car, but Lotuses are all about, and sports cars in general are about, being lightweight and, nimble and, that kind of thing. And whilst I kind of like the brutes of the American V8s, V12s, and things like that.
The
I love
big,
the
heavy,
sound, I love
windy
the
ones.
smell,
Yeah.
I love that. Honestly, I think it's, and maybe that's my Swedish heritage in a way, because here people are more into American cars than they are English cars or British cars.
Right.
Whilst a lot of British cars tended to go the more sort of lightweight route, like Lotus did, for instance. Certainly back in those sort of areas, 60s and 70s and things like that, or 60s in particular.
Yeah.
But then I drove a McLaren M1B, which is sort of on the border of a Can-Am car, I guess. It's not a full-on Can-Am car, but it's sort of, and I thought, this thing is just insane. It's like, doing 180 miles an hour down Hanger Straight, and everything's shaking. It's a like that. And I'm like, this is so cool. I have to do this. This is,
Like
amazing.
it's like some form of madness that you
Yeah.
just
And then
wow.
And then I think I read somewhere that, there are no women in the world that races Can-Am cars.
Really?
So I thought, well, why not be like a trailblazer? If I'm a trailblazer and another thing, why not do something like that? It was completely wild. And my husband said, absolutely not, because you're going to die, because you are completely mad. And I am a little bit mad. So you have to be if you're going to be a racing driver.
Yeah,
Honestly, you have to be. And this is me. Like, I did my first ever race when I was 47. And
wow.
you have to be a little bit mad. So, but I'm not mad to the point where I'm reckless. I am just like, prepared to put it, I say just stupid things like, you're not putting your life on the line. You're sort of, but I'm prepared to take the risk to get the benefit, in a race.
Just
And
how far you can get
do
with
that.
it.
Yeah, you have to be a little bit, leaning towards the madness to do that.
You've got to be more mad than not.
Well, it's a funny thing to say, but I always believe is like, because you have you have instinct, and you have natural ability and stuff like that, and then you have experience. But I've started off with very little experience. You have to rely on your instinct and your natural ability, and there are times when you run out of that ability, and there's no, where you really needed the experience, and you kind of go like, oh shoot, I haven't got that.
It's like,
and then you really have to take a deep breath and shut your eyes and pray. That's it.
and go for it and see.
Yeah. And if you can't do that, then you can't rate. You know what I mean? Because I didn't start karting when I was 4 years old, or like most of the people I competed against. So so it's a different it is a different thing. But anyway, back to the Can-Am cars, and I really wanted to do that. I still want to do that. And I'm still like, every day I send my husband actually sends me a message. He said, what about this Cobra Daytona? I'm like, yes, that one. Can I have that one? But you know, it is, I might go that way in historics. I'm not sure full on Can-Am, but you know, maybe a little bit more power. But yeah, he then said, is that McLaren are developing a GT4 car, would you drive that? And I can so remember this as well. It's the clearest day. I went to Paul Ricard and they were developing the GT4 570 GT4, and they asked me, and it was still a development car, and they said, you go out and do a couple of laps. And literally I went out and did one lap, came straight back in and says, something wrong with this car. And they said, what's wrong with that? I said, nothing happens when you press the throttle. And I said, no, that's how it is. I said, no way. You know, who wants to race that? You know, it doesn't go, you know. But that's literally how it felt to me, because I'd been driving 650S sprint car, you know, 650 horsepower. And all of a sudden on this, you know, car with restricted throttle, you know, all this sort of stuff. And I'm thinking, wow, you know, why would you drive this? This is like nuts. And they were all laughing at me. And I said, no, this is what GT4s are. And I'm like, what? Really? Why would I race this? So, but anyway,
I didn't get that rush from it.
It was not initially, but it was quite a funny experience. But then, I did a trial race. They did like a first officer race at Paul Ricard, September, whenever it was, 2017 maybe, and I came fourth. And I was so annoyed with myself. I was just like, I remember so well. And it was because my qualifier was really, really bad. And I made it like my mission after that I was going to get really good at qualifying. And I did. And the following year, it was quite a funny story actually, because there was a shortage of GT4 cars, and my husband sold my GT4 to another customer, because obviously I wasn't a priority. So, which was a bit annoying, but you know, this is customer comes first.
Business first, I guess. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I had to wait a bit longer for mine, but so I drove like a hired car for like the first year until I got my car. But no, I did really well. The first two races were a Spa.
Which is quite a place to start racing properly, isn't it?
I know, and I bet it was Spa. It's like, I love Spa.
Yeah.
And it was just like, and I took pole in the first race by 2.8 seconds. And it was just like, it had been wet, and then it was starting to dry out in qualifying, and I just decided to go on slicks. So I went on slicks when everybody else went on wet. But anyway, so I took pole, I won. And the second race I took pole, I won. And I thought, okay, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to do anything else in my life ever. I'm just going to go motor racing. Yeah. So
wow. I'm not surprised after doing that at Spa on your first time out. I mean, that would be like quite a shot in the arm, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it was
amazing.
It was so exciting. I loved it so much. And I went on from there, and I think we did, so we must have done like 12 races. I think I won 7, and I was on the podium with the other 5, and I won the championship with a couple of rounds to go, 4 or 5 races to go.
Wow.
And it was, I mean, I loved it so much. It was so exciting. And then still raced the Elan as well a little bit in between, and then the following year I defended my championship, and it was a lot harder because as the championship grew, and so it came down, I think, to the last race at Hockenheim, or the final sort of the first year I won it at Hockenheim.
Right.
And the second year he went down to the last round, which is some Bahrain. So I won the championship in Bahrain. And then that year as well, I did, I think I did a couple of rounds in British GT in the GT4 just
Yeah,
to feel for it, because I wanted to sort of get into British if I could.
that was
And
with Balf Motorsport, wasn't it?
yeah, so with another guy from the Pure Series, so we shared a car, and a guy called Stuart Proctor, and then but because we were like but we wanted to get an idea what it was like, having been only in like single make, and it was wild. The first race we did was Silverstone, so the first race ever to do like that was like a 3-hour race, Silverstone 500. And I think I got tapped around twice by GT3 cars, and it was just like hilarious. But it was about, again, I loved it so much. And then the following year I managed to secure some sponsorship from Sky, and was able to do a full championship in British, which I won again, the Pro-Am.
Yeah. I do remember you coming onto the grid and you had Sky sponsorship, and I thought, that's impressive to get Sky on board. I mean, that was
well,
amazing.
I've done all my own sponsorships. I haven't got a manager or anything like that. I've always done all my own. I didn't have a lot to start with, obviously, but then it went well. I was female. I know all the things that are good for sponsors as well. So
I remember we spoke with Jane Edwards in the British Touring Car Championship, and she said she used that as her unique selling point. It was kind of, look, I'm going to stand out, because
and you kind of have to, in a way, because it's like it is what sells you, because there's lots of drivers and many of them better than I am, of course, but it's like, actually, when it comes to sponsorship, it's not about how good you are anymore. It's about how marketable you are. So I did feel sometimes I felt like quite bad, because I know some really good drivers who really struggle to get sponsorship, and I'm thinking, who are better drivers than I am. But it's like, again, it's understanding that sponsorship isn't like that. It doesn't work like that. Sponsorship
not all about one thing.
No, and it does, and even to the point where very famous drivers, or even in I don't know, Formula One and stuff like that, it's not always about being the fastest driver. It's about having the full package that you can advertise and stuff like that. So anyway, and all my sponsorship have been relationships that I've made with people, that has subsequently led to me getting a sponsorship. But I became quite good at it. So my husband's very embarrassed sometimes, because I used to walk around and say, "Oh, would you sponsor me?" And he's like, "Oh, shh, don't say that right now." I'm like, why not? They can only say no, or they say yes. You know what I mean? It's like,
and I think that's a great thing to live by. They can only say no, and if they do, don't worry about it.
I'm Swedish. I haven't got a lot of filters, so but it has obviously worked really well for me. I raced an awful lot of money sponsorship, and I managed to race in British GT like fully funded by sponsors, pretty much.
That's amazing.
My husband might disagree, because he was one of my sponsors, but I'm very fortunate, I gotta say. I've been able to do, and hopefully I've been able to pay them back as well.
I think you certainly have, certainly with the back-to-back championships in your first 2 years of racing. I mean, that's a pretty good selling point to begin with, isn't it? And on the research I've done, I mean, you've also worked very hard to get the sponsorship. It's not like your husband's involved with McLaren, so that's a routine. It's far from that, and that I think that
it's exactly the opposite, because that was difficult, because anybody who's involved with McLaren, I could not have sponsorship from. So even though I was offered 3 times the amount of sponsorship that I actually got, I could not accept it, because it obviously, it cannot be seen to be in any way, reliant on anything to do with McLaren. So,
Yeah,
and racing in McLaren then made that quite hard, but,
wow.
I raced my own car. We bought that car, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
it's not,
It
so I
wasn't
think
given to you.
people look at it, think it's easier. Actually, it's harder. And actually, when you go to the team to sort of say, oh, can't you just ask for that? And I'm like, no, because actually I come down here because here's the customer here, that I'm down here.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get, because that he would never, Mike would never have done that anyway. It's not who he is as a person,
Yeah.
But
also
right equally, that's not how it's done, and you got to be so careful. So as soon as I had some lead on a sponsorship deal, it's like why I had Sky had nothing to do with McLaren.
Right.
Absolutely nothing to do with McLaren. So, and I tell you that it's all quite a funny story how I got the Sky sponsorship is that I have some sponsors of Topaz Detailing.
Yeah.
And there was a cars and coffee event at their place in London, and I arrived there in one of our McLarens, and I reverse in out in front, and there's a guy reverses his car in next to me in another McLaren. So when we get out of the cars, I say, I show you mine, you show me yours, kind of thing. And he said, and we chatted, and then he said, oh, do you take your car on track? And I said, no, not this one. I said, I do drive on track. I said, in fact, I'm trying to get into British GT. I race, McLaren GT4 in pure McLaren. And he said, oh, we do sponsorship. I'm like, oh, good. And anyway, he gave me his car. I didn't even look at it because I was busy, with my other partners, so I was mingling with our customers, talking and whatever. But I put this guy's card in my car, and then we did the coffee thing, came back out, and as I was leaving, he stood in front of my car and he said, "Don't forget to send me your details." And I'm like, well, it's fine anyway. Picked up the card. He was the CEO of Sky. That's how I got my deal with Sky. Had nothing to do with anybody else.
Wow, it was like a chance meeting almost.
Chance meeting. We chatted. We liked each other. And, I then, the following week, I went to Sky, Sky's headquarters, and, spoke to them. And a couple of weeks later, I signed with Sky.
Wow.
So,
that's amazing.
But a lot of my sponsorship are like that because I put myself in places and situations where there's obviously likely to be people who have got businesses or have this or, whatever. But there was actually being around McLaren was harder because a lot of people who wanted to offer me sponsorship were involved with McLaren.
And you couldn't.
So I could not accept it.
See, that's amazing because people don't understand that. Yeah, people think, oh, well, if you know someone who works there or if you're related to someone who works or has got a link, it doesn't work that way, does it? I mean, what you say, it kind of works against you because there's always that preconception that, oh, well, you must know someone because of who you're married to or whatever it might be.
And of course you meet people that, that might lead to them introducing you to somebody else.
Yeah.
But the direct link to it doesn't work. So it certainly isn't easy. And I always say this to people, it's like, I network all the time. Wherever I went, now even if I go anywhere here and people say to me, what do you do? I go like, I'm a racing driver. And I go like, what? That's exciting. Because you never know, somebody might say, but if you don't say that, and I'm not, I know I'm a racing, I'm not like a professional racing driver,
Yeah.
But I behave like that, and I tell people I am, so that puts something in their head that goes like, but I might, my business might blah blah,
I know someone
and this is what you have to do. Yeah, the only way is to be in places where you meet these people, because I have never ever sent an email to someone and said, will you sponsor me?
Right.
Because it doesn't work like that. You need a relationship. So I build relationships first, and then if it turns into it might just turn into a great friendship.
Yeah.
Never end up in any sponsorship deal, but it might, and and that as well. But like, I think people have this notion that you can just send your sponsors deck to someone,
Send like 1,000 emails,
randomly, and they're going to sponsor you. I mean, it's like they get like millions, well, not millions, but thousands of these things. And why would they sponsor you? You know, because
what kind of makes you any different to the average?
And why? And it's and I'm no women's lib at all. I'm like, I work with cars all my life. I've done all these like things, but I'm not. I'm more of a tomboy than I'm not really a girly girl. But I'm not. Here for when it comes to sponsorship, I do realize that is one of my selling points, is that I'm female.
Yeah.
And however bad that, because actually that's quite annoying. But you know what I mean? It's like we all compete with each other on, if it was just on who is fastest around Silverstone, obviously that wasn't going to be me.
Yeah.
So, there'd be like a young lad who, probably, not being sexist, but, that's probably how it's going to be. But I'm equally like, if I was beaten by a 17-year-old guy on track, he didn't beat me because he was 17 or male. He beat me because he was better. I'm fine with that. So you know what I mean? It's like everybody for the right job kind of thing. But
absolutely. And you said that sometimes you kind of feel a bit sort of bad about pushing your the female side of things, but you can't help that you're a female. I mean, it's not something you can. You didn't choose it. And think, well, and as you say, it's quite cutthroat. You've got to, be selfish in other ways. But if it's going to work for you, then you're going to push it, aren't you? I mean, it's
exactly.
From a much smaller scale. When I invite people on for interviews and they say, okay, maybe, I say, well, I've spoken to Mario Andretti and Jackie X, and they kind of go, oh, really? And it's that kind of, you just use it to push push your way, not use it in a bad way, but just say, well, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is a good way to be. Which is great. I mean, but because obviously, like Sky, I think they're known for, they sponsor like teams in like cycling and lots of other things as well, don't they? So obviously it was so and everyone knows Sky, so you're going to get sort of noticed with it on the car and everything and all that. But
and he had my other sponsors. They weren't my biggest sponsors. I had bigger sponsors than Sky, but they were because that's also one thing about sponsorship, is that you got to realize what they want. It's not them giving you money. Sponsorship is about, or partnerships, I like to think of them, is like, what can you do for them? And like Sky is like, they don't need to put their logo on my car. Everybody knows who Sky is. It's not like, hey, we need to sell more subscriptions. No, but that's not why they were sponsoring me. They were sponsoring me so that they could to give back to their VIP customers, so that they could come to events. I did all these, like, I had VIP customers at every race meeting and stuff like that. I did talks at, International Women's Day for their staff. I don't know, but it's a different sort of thing. Whilst some other sponsors or partners might be, they need the exposure. They need
they kind of need
their logo on your car, because they need people to notice them. That's a different thing. So you have to treat your sponsors differently, because but the good thing obviously with Sky was the Sky is such a strong brand, is that it brought my other sponsors brands up, because they were seen on the car together with Sky, and they go like,
okay,
sponsored by Sky, that must be a good thing, she must be good. Or you understand what I mean? It's sort of
it's sort of, obviously different backers want different things, and they have different requirements from what you can offer, and which I guess leads on. I mean, as I've mentioned, we spoke to a lot of people in the British Touring Car Championship, and obviously the hospitality and that kind of a thing is a big part of it. you got into the British GT Championship in 2020. We all know what happened in 2020 globally, a horrendous time for everyone. And the British Touring Car Championship and many others, I think the British Superbikes as well, they were all struggling because all their sponsors, they couldn't offer a day out at the racing. They couldn't offer, that trackside experience, anything like that, which was obviously incredibly tough because, if you're not going to get anything back, why would you invest in something? And it's a bit of an odd one. I mean, when you got into the British GT Championship, COVID hit. Did you think, oh, was there ever a time where there was a danger that you weren't going to make the grid, or sponsors might not be sure about sticking with you? Because it must have been very good. And it's hard enough anyway to get sponsors, especially with a pandemic going on.
Yeah, I think I was fortunate that all my sponsors stuck with me through COVID, and all of them were just glad we got on the grid. And I think the difference between, one difference between British GT and BTCC is that BTCC is like so heavily sponsored, and they sell every inch of their car. Whereas in British GT, it tends to be more, the AMS sponsor part of it, but sponsorship isn't such a big thing. I think probably I was the heaviest sponsored AM driver on the grid. Because a lot of people are, they're wealthy in their own right, and they race with their own money, and they're not so as they're bothered. I'm sure they have sponsorship, but like it's not as critical maybe. But for me, I'm not wealthy to that point, and that showed in the end, because although I think I can be really good in a GT3 car as well, but I could afford to race but not to test so much, because my money would only stretch so far, whilst some of my competitors would be racing. I think Loggy, who won last year, did something like 80 races last year.
Right.
80. And I mean, it's so if somebody's throwing 3, 4, 5 million at it, when I had like 800,000. But you think like 800,000, I raced 800,000 in sponsorship.
That's amazing.
And it's mind-blowing money, but it's not enough.
And it's still 20% of what other people have got, perhaps.
And to be able to compete at that level, you can be however talented you want, but which is a little bit what led me to where I am as well. I don't want to go back. I know I can go back and race a GT4 and and probably do quite well. But I got to a point where my dream was to move into a GT3 car, and I'll never forget, the first time I drove one, that was still like, I'm looking, that's it, not driving a GT4 car ever again. And then I actually went back, because I went back and raced at Portimao, not last year, the year before. Went back, and Pure did, they did a couple of races at Portimao, like I think there were 4 races actually, one weekend, 4 races. I won 3 of them.
Yes.
And it was just like, and it was exciting because he was in a trophy car, so had the full horsepower, so I had a little bit more horsepower and stuff like that. So it was fun. I enjoyed it. But like racing as a full championship and stuff like that, I still, my heart is in a GT3 car. And I've spoken to so many teams this year, and who wanted to offer me seats at some ridiculously cheap prices because they want me in the team and stuff like that. But like I still felt, like I said, it's 2 things. One, I have my business to focus on this year, and motor racing. It isn't just the racing. There's only so many weekends and so many days you go testing, but it's like working out 6 days a week. And I did, I become totally obsessed, because you're sort of in this, I don't know, my whole mindset is about motor racing, and
get like a tunnel vision almost.
So I struggle to almost focus on other things. So it is the right decision for this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about the sponsorship thing and things like that, and you touched on it. You can be the best driver out there, but if you haven't got the funds to do it, then you're going to struggle, and that's the case all across the motorsport spectrum. People seem surprised by it. I mean, again, there's something happened in the British touring cars today, and said, driver's gone, and another one's come in and said, "Oh, that's not fair. This guy's a really good driver. He's had some good results. He's had this and he's had that." I guess, but if someone can come in and offer a bit more to keep the team going,
Yeah,
then obviously they're gonna have a better chance of getting in the seat, and it's just the way it goes. It's
it is
it's
it's not fair.
it's nothing new, but it's
If
not fair. You're
no,
right. Yeah.
if anybody thinks motor racing is fair, then
No,
they
you
certainly have
go out
never
and
been
do something
involved in
else.
motor racing.
Yeah, no, there's nothing fair about it, but yeah, something keeps us coming back, doesn't it? Just a quick, I mean, in that British GT, you were your kind of like co-driver was like you and Hanky, who I mean, he's obviously a McLaren factory driver, was at the time. He's
He
a
was.
McLaren factory driver, very, very, very good. And the amount of people that we have discussions. Who do you think's the best? A top British racer who doesn't get enough credit or whatever. And I actually said this was a couple of years ago, and I said, like, you and Hanky at McLaren, he's top driver.
He
And
is.
everyone I was talking to went, who?
Yeah.
And I just went, oh, really? He's really good, isn't he? Very, very good.
He's very good, and he's very good driver coach as well. He's been my coach. We won 3 championships together, and he's he's exceptional. He is, and he doesn't actually get the credit for it, and unfortunately he's not been in the right car. He's doing much better this year, and he's now also the team manager of this new Lucky Kira's new team. But he's it's so funny because I watched him. I went to British GT at Silverstone this year, and I was in his garage, and Lucky Kira started the race, and so I'm watching Ewan and the way he behaves when he's watching what's going on at the start. So I said to the guys, did he behave like this when I was in the car too? And they went, yeah, all the time. And I'm like, oh my God, he's like more nervous than anyone else. He's just like absolutely hopping up and down. And I'm like, oh my God.
But he's just living it.
It was quite funny. Yeah, it was quite funny. But he was more nervous than me, certainly. By the time I'm on the grid, I'm like calm as a cucumber. I'm like, okay, there's nothing else I can do. I can only race now. So, I've done all the preparation I can, blah, blah, blah. Whilst he is still, super, super nervous. So, but he's really, really good. He's great. I love him.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, I guess that comes back to like the control thing. So when you're in the car, you're in control of it, and you've got that. You're used to being in control of the car and the situation mainly.
Yeah.
When you get taken out of that, you must think, oh, what's going to happen? Is it going to go wrong? What's going to happen?
Yeah.
How am I going to get? It must be, for someone who, I don't know, is going to have control of the car later or has had the car before, it must be incredibly nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
To not
I'd hear him sometimes, like I hear him in the background, when my engineer was talking to me, and they go like, I can remember it so well. One time he was trucking it down with rain, and he just handed the car over to me. It must have been like where he'd started, so it's a two race weekend. We would do 2 1-hour races, and he had decided to start on slicks in the basically it was rain. So he went to the grid on wets and then decided, I'm going to go back and start slicks. So started from the pit lane.
Right.
And then he went out and he got a really good lead and then handed over to me. And I'm not on his worn slicks, and it starts to rain again. But we're in the lead. So he's just like, he's like, just tell her to go faster. And I'm like thinking, like, shut the, up. Because, I didn't start racing when I was 4. And then I said to him, look, do the white line. And he said, drive along the white line. I'm thinking, white line, and then there's grass. This is like, it's Snetterton or something. white line is grass, and I'm on slicks, and it's wet, and I'm like, oh my god. And he's like, well, just drive the karting line. And I could hear him say this, like in the background. I'm thinking, I've never done karting in my entire life. You just shut up.
I don't know the karting line.
I know. It's just so funny. And then afterwards, he's like, oh, I said, I actually heard you say all those things. And anyway, a couple of races later, we're at Brands Hatch, absolutely hammering it down with rain, warm up. He goes out and he goes over the radio. You know, I'm going to come in, I'm aquaplaning, this, and I'm like, you tell him to stay the hell out of that. You know, he's not coming in. Go faster. You should go faster, you know.
Yeah,
but
you're telling him to take the karting line.
But that was like, yeah. So we always had this sort of banter. So we'd always laugh about it. We'd go like, okay, yeah.
Oh, I love it. Love that. But no, he always comes across as a very, very good driver.
He is.
I mean, when you're in the British GT, I mean, did you have any expectations going into that first season? You're in the GT4, and you ended up taking pole.
Yeah. I mean,
do you think we can do quite well here? We go for the championship, or?
Well, I think because there was a lot of silver drivers, and obviously there wasn't a lot of AMs, so you know, and that's the hard thing is in certainly in GT4 in British is that there's so many silver drivers, silver pairings who are, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, what you've done. You know, they're young and upcoming drivers, but they, you know, they're really professional drivers. They've been racing for like 10, 15 years. That's quite hard, you know. So I got to say, GT4 British GT is actually quite difficult as an AM. So you know, we knew that was going to be hard. Obviously, with COVID and everything, it was even more sort of spectacular. You know, it was weird things that happened and stuff like that. But you know, on pace, we weren't. You know, we were actually quite good. But you know, so we were, and you know, and not. I wasn't surprised by it because you know I knew the car quite well by then. You know, it was more the sort of number of cars, you know, and having all the GT3 cars whizzing past you all the time, you know, that was took longer to sort of get used to.
That's the
but then that was quite good because a lot of people who race when I started racing GT3 cars, is that because I know what it's like racing a GT4 car in British GT, you know what it's like when a GT3 car suddenly appears in your rearview mirror and you're gonna go, oh my god, you know, this thing is huge as well. So because most of the incidents actually that happen, or many of the more serious incidents that happen in British GT are between GT3s and GT4s.
Yeah, because the traffic.
Yeah. So, and that is, you know, and I had one of actually last year in the GT3 at Alton Park, had a great run, was running third, and got you know, a back marker GT4 car, you know, got in front of me, and I just went, you know, and somebody said to them on the radio, stay off the racing line, and they did completely the opposite and completely blocked me, and you know, but you know, and then the option is to try and you almost go on the grass or you give it up, and I gave it up because, you know, again, one of those things where I can't afford to keep crashing because I don't have funds, you know. So yeah, so you know, there's frustrations as well, but it, you know, it's all part of racing. So
yeah, and I guess you could kind of sympathise with them as well because you'd been in
in there before. Exactly. And like I said, it's never fair. So on anyone. So
no, true. You mentioned like GT3. You made the step up just for, was it 3 races with the like Team Rocket? You know, Jensen Button's.
Oh yes, I did. Yeah.
Team. Did you get to work alongside Jensen much? Was he around? Was he
no, I mean,
because obviously we all know who he is.
Yeah, we did when we sort of prepped for Silverstone, because we did a bit of a sort of Sky thing there, so a joint sort of Sky thing. So we did when we did the testing ahead of the Silverstone 500, which, you know, Jensen raced in as well then with Chris Buncombe. Yeah, and I have met him. You know, I don't know him, but you know, I met and talked to him 5-6 times. But yeah, he's really nice. You know, he's a really nice guy. He was, you know, mainly talking to his young son at the time on the phone, and
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, I'll do that later. You know, right now I'm on the phone to my son. And
Yeah. He was very young at the time. I mean.
yeah,
Quick word on Jensen. What I like about him, obviously, we all know his F1 and single seat background, but obviously he's gone on to GT. He's done a bit of that, and he's just gone into NASCAR, and he's done Le Mans, and I love that.
yeah,
Drivers who do loads of different things. We'll come on to that very shortly, but yeah, it's just great, to see drivers doing different. We've seen it with NASCAR recently. Shane Van Gisbergen's done it, and I think Brody Kostecki's going to do it, and you've got some of the NASCAR guys are going over to do the Indy 500. Carl Larson's doing it next year. I just think it's great. I mean, is that something that you'd like to try? Maybe just different disciplines.
not NASCAR, but I think that seems a bit brutal. But
It is.
I quite fancy doing some off-road stuff.
Oh yeah.
So I have some really good friends of mine who race in the Baja 1000, and I went out there earlier this year, I think so, February time. February time, and I did get to drive some or be driven by them in some of these trophy trucks.
Right.
And like 1,000 brake horsepower, like monster trucks, and through the desert in Mexico. And
wow,
it was like so exciting. And then I drove the smaller ones that if I raced in the Bar 1000, obviously I wouldn't race a trophy truck. I don't know what I'm doing yet. So, but the sort of, there's an open class where you can race things like razors. I don't know if you know what they are. They're like larger versions of, they look like buggies, but they're super cool, and and still fast enough to feel like it's going really fast, especially when cows are crossing the road, and there is no road sometimes as you come around the corner. But it's I love the whole idea of it, and I absolutely love it. Is so exciting, absolutely outrageously scary, and I mean to the point where, because I admire rally drivers so much.
Oh, they're a different,
because they are so brave.
They're a different breed.
Yeah,
in
absolutely,
the car world.
so brave. And one of the things I really don't like is I like these drops down the side of a mountain, and you're driving along a road, or whatever what's supposed to be a road isn't really a road. But it's like but that's I would love to do, probably I wouldn't start with the Bar 1000, but I would love to do like a shorter, maybe 250k sort of race, and see if I was good at it. And because I've been driving with these guys who are when I've been in the smaller trucks, these guys who are proper racers, and race in every Bar 1000, and one of them's won the Bar 1000 like 5 times. And I stuck with him. I mean, literally I was behind him the whole time, and he and he said, well, that's brave. And I'm like, I couldn't see a thing, he's just covered in dust, and I just trusted that he wouldn't drive us into a cactus. But it was like but yeah, I'd like to try that. But
that would be, that's cool. That's a very cool answer. I like that. I think I spoke with Tom Coronel, who's done the Dakar, and he absolutely loves that. But
yeah,
he said you've got to be a special kind of crazy to take that on. But
well, that's the thing, and I think I am probably a bit crazy. And my husband's just like, "What? You're gonna do what?
Like, you want to do what now?
Yeah. How about that Can-Am car?" Yes, exactly.
Yeah, can I have a go in there? Oh, fantastic. Just looking at the time, can I wind it down? One thing I did want to ask. Portimao, I love it. It's a fantastic circuit, and every single series that's ever raced there just looks brilliant, whether it's F1 or GTs or bikes. Is it as much fun to drive as it looks?
Oh, it is. It's one of my favorite circuits in the world. Yeah.
With the end of the straight and the
yeah, it is amazing. It really is. It's a super cool circuit. Yeah, it's, very undulated, a lot of blind crests and blind corners, and it is a challenge, but that is like a bravery circuit. It requires, a couple of times you have to shut your eyes and hope for the best, but it's super cool. Yeah,
Look, I mean, in my mind, it's kind of up there with like Spa and
it is.
and those circuits that have got the undulation changes, the speed and the technical sections, and it's a proper circuit. It looks fantastic.
It is a proper circuit. Yeah.
I think Bathurst is up there in my mind as well as
Yeah.
kind of one of those mental
that,
circuits.
that looks like I went to Bathurst the same year as COVID to 2020. So I went to Bathurst and watched the McLaren come second.
Yes.
And I was in the garage literally the whole race. It was so exciting.
Wow.
And Ben Barnicoat did this like fabulous overtake, but there was some super serious accidents, and I mean it's a scary place.
There was one
But
up on the
again, that
mountain,
is
I
like,
remember, wasn't there? There was quite a big one
yeah,
on the skyline, I think.
yeah,
I remember.
Ledgar, he had a big crash as well. But anyway, there was a lot of I know, and when practice started, there were kangaroos on track, and they all went like, what are we going to do now? Kangaroos on track. I'm thinking, what's this kangaroos on track? But I mean, what why not? It's so much fun.
It's where they live, so
yeah, exactly. And it was hopping like actually the racing line. Even the commentator was like,
it was a dancing
right line. It was fabulous.
like showing the safety car where to go almost. It was just
I know.
yeah, surreal. No, very cool. They're very cool. No, I'm glad Portimao is as good fun to drive as it looks. Just very quickly, I mean, obviously, you said you'd like to get back racing again once the business is up and running and things like that. Just one thing, obviously, we had the Goodwood weekend just gone past. Have you done anything at Goodwood, or would you like to?
Yes, well, I have gone up the hill a few times at Goodwood, but I drove up in a GT4 car one year, and what else did I go up in? I can't remember now. Yeah, I love Goodwood. I mean, it's amazing. I was in Sweden this time, so I didn't go. I heard the weather was terrible, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, because I think like Saturday didn't have. Was it Saturday? Yeah, I think Saturday didn't have.
Saturday got cancelled, but
the pinks and stuff were blowing everywhere, and
I know it's windy. Yeah, it's been weird weather, hasn't it? But yeah, it's always a blast. I'll be at the revival, and I want to race at the revival as well. Not this year, but maybe next year.
Ooh, okay.
See if there's a way I can race the revival. I think that'd be great fun. Yeah. I mean, there's the drivers there as well. Such high caliber drivers, so it's difficult to kind of. But just to be able to do it would be amazing.
Yeah. Very. It's just a great place, isn't it? Whether it's the revival or Festival of Speed or whatever it may be. Yeah, terrific. Just very quick, I want to touch on something very quickly. You got the Race for RP charity that you're part of. I'm going to try and pronounce this correctly. It is relapsing polychondritis, isn't it?
That's correct.
Glad I got that right. I thought it was. It basically attacks sort of like nerves and muscles and stuff, doesn't it? And it's
your cartilages, which you have throughout your body, and
obviously you set this charity up to raise awareness of it, and which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, it is an amazing charity, and the fact I know the founders very well, and that's how I got into it, and they actually started off because they were into bikes, cycling. So it was actually a ride for RP initially, but then when the lady founder, her husband, they founded it together. He started racing in Ferrari Challenge, and he still races. He races in the new trophy series McLaren as well, but he's in his 70s now. Wow. And but he's he loves it so much. But races in Ferrari Challenge in America. But they use motor racing as a tool raise awareness. So they have a number of drivers throughout the world, mainly in America, it's got to be said, but they've been very close to me, and I'm still very close to them, and they're for One Viva now, my new business as well, they're our chosen charity partners. And for instance, I've got Kenny Breck is donating one of his helmets for our winter party for One Viva, which we're going to auction away for Race for RP. It's close to my heart. They've always supported me, been my partners since I started racing, really. And they do a lot of stuff, not just for relapsing polychondritis, but relapsing polychondritis is an autoimmune disease, and all the research they do will also benefit other autoimmune diseases. And especially now after COVID, it's become quite a big thing, because everybody's realizing that a lot of things, a lot of people have a lot of strange symptoms, and they're actually our immune system responding to certain things, which means it's like an autoimmune response. And if we can understand how we can deal with that, then we can actually, even if we can't cure, but if we can find ways of treating lots of these conditions, millions of people would benefit. So it's special.
That's great. This sort of reaches a bit further, obviously, with the autoimmune stuff, which is lovely. No, good, excellent. No, love to hear that. That's brilliant. Right, we also like to wrap up these with a few little fun kind of questions. We are usually the same every week. Just a quick one. Did you have a favourite driver growing up? I mean, you said you weren't really into motorsport from a young age, but did you have a racing driver that you liked when you were growing up?
Yes, and actually, growing up, but as I was older, actually, it was Kenny Breck.
Brilliant. Did you know that?
He knows that. The first time I met him, actually, we were having dinner, sat next to each other, and I said to him, "Look, you were my hero when I was growing up, But it's so funny now. He's a friend, so yeah. Anyway.
Excellent. That's great. Kenny Brown was one of those guys, because obviously he was out in the IndyCar. We always used to cheer for the Europeans, so it was great. Yeah, no, fantastic. Have you got one now? And is it Kenny?
Yeah, it's still Kenny. I mean, if other people could drive like Kenny, he's unique, But he was here with me. He said because he's building a house near where he grew up, and he said, "Oh, this drive down to our house," he said, "that's where where I had my first car when I was 10 years old." He had his first car when he was 10 years old, and he was just driving down out on the lake when it was frozen in winter, down this gravel track, and amazing. So, but anyway, so
yeah, we love Kenny. Brilliant. That's fantastic. Have you got a favourite car that you've ever raced?
Oh, I love the McLaren GT3, I gotta say.
I thought it might be. Have you got a favourite circuit to race at? We touched on Portimao. Would it be Portimao, or would it be another one that you?
Spa.
It's a good choice. Yeah. It's a solid choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. You sort of touched on this. Apart from the off-road stuff, is there anything on track that you'd like to have a go at? I mean, we've sort of almost ruled out NASCAR, but it was. Would it be like touring cars or single seaters? Would you have a go? Would you like to try? Or
no, I mean, I guess I would. The only thing I sort of wish I'd done more of probably is like more endurance races. The only one I've only done one, like 12-hour. I did a 12-hour race in Abu Dhabi where we came second.
Yeah.
In the GT4. So yeah, I wish I'd done more. Or if I was only picking like a few races to do now going forward rather than full championships, I would choose to do more endurance stuff.
Yeah. Would you want to do Le Mans, the big one?
Well, I think to me probably Spa 24 hours would be more exciting, but it's but also I know that's incredibly tough. So whether I could stomach it, I don't know, but I'd like to think I could, but
yeah,
it's going quite dark.
Yeah.
I'm an
Is it?
hour ahead of you, so it's like
Yeah, I was going to say it's 30:30 there, isn't it? We're
10:30.
gonna wrap it up. I've just seen one question that has come in actually. Mark O'Neill, evening, Mark. This is a great question. What's your favourite moment in your racing career? Ooh, that's a good one.
It's probably been my first win in at Spa.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was very exciting, and sort of that was yeah, that was really special. And Bruno Senna in my garage, and yeah, it was special.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Having a Senna
Yeah.
there as well. Not bad. Okay, two more. You've raced against a lot of really good drivers. I always ask this, and it's an impossible question to answer. Just going to name a few. I mean, you've raced against, you've got like Richard and Sam Neary, very good drivers. You've got like Jack Mitchell, Ian Loggy, Yelmer Berman, Adam Ballon, Patrick Kiala, Will Burns, Mo Ritson,
Yeah.
hugely underrated driver as well. Like Ross Wiley, Sam Dehaan, got Rob Collard and Jordan Collard. You've got like Ulis DePau and Jamie Caroline, Sandy Mitchell, Johnny Adam. So many great drivers you've raced against. Is there one in your mind? Well, I should say you and Hanky as well, shouldn't I? Is there one in your mind who you think, oh, they're really good? Is like as a top player?
Oh yeah, I mean I think they're all brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, like I couldn't pick one because they're all different, and
Yeah.
and you learn, when you race, you learn who's good at what, and some of them are aggressive, some of them are aggressive and nuts, and some of them are aggressive but fair,
Yeah.
so but and I'm not going to mention names, but this is how it is. Yes.
Yeah. No, that's a safe answer. That's fair enough. Right, final question. I think I know the answer. Who's faster, you or Mike?
Oh, that'd be me.
Yes.
Yeah. He's fine with it too. He's like, he could not be. He's my biggest supporter. He's so proud of me. I think people think, because, he would find that difficult. Not in the least. He's like, he's so excited, and he loves racing historic cars, and he's really good, but he's happy. He loves the car, whilst I love the car as a tool to go racing.
Sure.
So it's our approach is slightly different, but he's my biggest supporter.
No, which is lovely, which is the way it should be. That's great.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, fantastic. Well, I mean, it's an hour and a half. It's 10:30 where you are. It's getting dark, so it's probably a good time to wrap up. But no, thank you very much for coming on. It's been great speaking with you and hearing your slightly different journey to most people
Yes.
into the driving seat, which is great. Yeah. So
Yeah.
thank you very much for sparing your time and having a chat. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been great chatting to you, and best of luck.
Yeah, great stuff. And obviously, good luck with the business and with the charity. And we'll hope to see you back out on track, hopefully more full time in the not too distant future.
Thank you so much.
Lovely. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Thank you for the comments. And we'll be back for another chat next week, which we're announcing tomorrow. So thanks very much, everyone. Great to have you on board. And obviously, thanks again to Mia for sparing her time. You can go have a lie down now. Right. Thanks very much, everyone. And we'll see you next